This episode of ChatGPD was made possible by the hard work and creativity of our production team. A huge thank you to Chris Sang, Alakia Chandran, and Shakoyak Forazan for their expert production, editing, and behind-the-scenes magic that brings each conversation to life. We also want to thank Saratoga and the IMS for their support in helping us share ideas, stories, and resources that empower our grad students at every stage of their journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of ChatGPD, our podcast on careers in biomedical science. I'm Pamela Plant and I'm the Director of Graduate Professional Development here at the Institute of Medical Sciences at University of Toronto. And today I'm joined by our guest, Kayvan Aflaki, who is a naval officer with the Canadian Armed Forces. Welcome, Kayvan.
Thanks so much for having me, Pam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Should I be saluting you, or what is the proper naval greeting?
Well, I mean, saluting is conventionally how you would greet each other. If you were like walking across one another on base or even in public and you're in uniform, you always want to salute a superior officer, so someone who's a higher rank than you. But I'm totally cool with a handshake or a high five if we're just hanging out.
I'm going to salute you because you are a higher rank than I am, for sure.
It's very sweet of you, but thank you.
And I mean, sorry for the joking and the naivete, but like, wow, so excited that you are our very first armed forces and military personnel to ever come on this podcast. So you're going to open up a whole new world for our listeners.
Amazing.
And it's a world that not many of us get to glimpse into. I don't know anyone in the military. So you are going to be the one who pulls back the curtain for all of us in the studio today and just gives us a glimpse of the armed forces, because I'm sure there's more to it than we think.
Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think when a lot of people think about the military or the Canadian Armed Forces in general, people have this conception of people who are armed to the teeth, guns, tanks, planes, and combat. Yeah. But the reality is there's a lot more depth and a lot more nuance to the Canadian Armed Forces. There are a lot of jobs within the Canadian Armed Forces that don't necessarily involve combat. And the Canadian Armed Forces, or CAF for short, is one of those organizations and one of the militaries globally that is very involved in humanitarian work as well. So that's really a focal point of a lot of the work that we do.
And there would be a lot of intelligence gathering as well. Is that part of the military, or is that another part of the government?
So the military does do a lot of intelligence work. It's interesting. The military in itself is sort of like this very big ecosystem. You obviously have the people who are involved very heavily in the combat aspect. That's certainly a part of any modern military. But you also do have people who are involved in things like research and development, where a lot of skills that you would pick up in graduate school could be applied. There's also sort of that intelligence side of the house, where a lot of the work that you do would be involved around collecting information, interpreting information, storing it in a database, giving presentations to people who are involved in policy or in government, and helping them make reasonable decisions about geopolitical situations that are unfolding around the world, or even domestically here in Canada. So it is a very, very big ecosystem. Yeah. The military is a lot more than just planes and tanks and guns and people in uniforms and marching and saluting.
And I would imagine it's always changing. It's a dynamic organism that changes with leadership. So now, especially now with Carney as our prime minister, there might be another shift in armed forces, because now it's shifting from kind of a peacekeeping more of a stronger military presence. Is that naive in thinking that?
No, not at all. It seems
like it's more direct, going in that direction now.
Yeah, if for those who might be following the news or reading up on it, it's very interesting to see the shift that's taken place recently. There's a lot more funding going towards the military, and there is definitely a push for Canada to become a lot more self-reliant with like our national defense. But there is also a very big push for Canada to focus more on things like research and development, things like procurement of our own equipment and resources. So there definitely is a huge shift that's happening. And I think it's a really great time to have this conversation, because doorways are opening for a lot of prospective students and people who might be interested in looking at a career in the military. It's definitely an avenue that's becoming a lot more popular.
Yeah, and this we're so excited that you're here to kind of shed light on that for us. You know, it's a long road from, correct me if I'm wrong, machine learning and maternal mortality in
Yes.
Canada, which was the focus of your graduate degree, to naval officer. What is that journey there?
Oh yeah, it's at first glance you might kind of look at that and be like, well, how did you get from point A to point B? Like there's a lot of question marks in between. I think it's safe to say that the decision to transition from being a graduate student studying maternal mortality and artificial intelligence and then pivoting and going into the military was not really an easy choice. I always had my feet sort of in the water when it came to the military. I was involved in the reserves for a period of time. And that was
Did that start in high school or was that in university? Or
that
when
started
did you?
in university, my final year of university. I was a student at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and I was doing an undergraduate degree in a bachelor's of health science. And at the time, I really did enjoy getting involved in extracurriculars, but I think I was always looking for something more. There was sort of this like itch for adventure that I never really could satiate, just joining clubs and getting involved in the classroom. And joining the reserves was something that I had heard about through a friend of my brother's who was actually a physician in the military. And he sort of expressed that joining the reserves is this kind of part-time option where you don't need to necessarily commit fully to being in the military. You sign up, you do training. You're not obligated to go 7 days a week, but really it's only 1 day a week where you'll show up maybe around 6 o'clock or 7 p.m., depending on which armory you go to or barracks you go to. You'll do some training on a particular topic for that day. So you'll learn about military discipline or some technical aspects like using a compass, using a map, survival techniques. It's just kind of cool hands-on learning for things that you wouldn't necessarily learn about in a classroom. And in the event of, let's say, an emergency, like if there's a flood or a forest fire somewhere, you could be called upon to help out because you have that repository of skills. They've kind of trained you part-time to be available to help if more help is needed. And so that really appealed to me. And I made the decision to follow that route in my final year of my undergrad. And as I was approaching the end of my master's degree, I found that COVID had really put I think a damper on my ability to pursue extracurriculars. I was really looking forward to doing things like going to conferences, getting involved with international opportunities. And because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to do that. Naturally, I think I sort of saw how much the reserves was providing for me at the time with like sort of providing that opportunity to pursue adventure. And I figured, why not take it to the next level? Why not take a year or 2 years after I graduate and commit going full time and seeing where that takes me? Because I wasn't really tied down to anything in particular. I was still very open-minded towards the end of my master's degree with doing something out there and trying something different. I wasn't also fully sure if maybe medicine or pursuing academia was necessarily right for me. And I sort of made the decision to put my name forward to go full time. And then I went through with the application process. So I guess to answer your question, the roots were always sort of there before I even started my master's degree. I always sort of had my feet in the water, you know, with the reserves, but it was really the pandemic, I think, and my experience in graduate school that made me think, well, why not? Why not just push it to the next level and see where it takes me? I'm young and I have time to kill, so let's do it.
Now, is commitment, it sounds like, okay, let's try it out for a year or two. Is that possible? When you sign up for the military, I keep thinking it's like you drink the Kool-Aid, you're in for life. But
Yeah.
You're saying that you can sign up and you can go through basic training and then you can determine how long you stay in the military? Or I would imagine they strongly encourage you because they've invested in that training.
Yes.
But what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's worth clarifying that when you do sign up, you do sign a contract. So you are committed, you're bound by a certain period of time to remain with the military and to see your contract through. It does depend. Some contracts can be as short as 3 or 4 years, and others can be as long as 10 years or 9 years. It all depends on what profession you sign up for. So I suppose to take it back a step, the military offers a number of occupations, and these can vary from things like being an engineer or a technician to being a clerk, to being a nurse, to being a physician, or even to being an infantry person or a pilot. Anything you could probably think of under the sun that exists in the civilian world, there is a military equivalent for it as well. And you can also decide what element you'd like to go into. So whether you'd like to be in the Air Force or in the Navy or in the Army, which is predominantly focuses on land-based operations. And so for me, to satiate that sort of like need for adventure, I decided to go with the Navy. And specifically, I wanted to be a Naval Warfare Officer. I was really fascinated and drawn to the adventure aspect of that and sort of the geopolitical association with that job. And that profession came with a 9-year obligatory service period. So you are locked in for 9 years. The nice thing is there's flexibility with the military. So when you do sign up for a profession, you're not bound to stay with that profession necessarily. You do go through a period of basic training where they teach you everything you need to know about how to be a good military member, how to follow orders, and how to be disciplined in your life. But you do have the flexibility to pivot and change careers if you feel like maybe the profession you signed up for isn't necessarily what you wanted to do. So there's a big push to keep people in the military, and they're very flexible with sort of allowing you to mold your career however you'd like, which is a really cool thing the military offers.
Is there a time frame at which you can pivot or you should pivot, and then after that time, pivot no longer? Or can you pivot indefinitely throughout your career?
In theory, you could pivot indefinitely, but when you do start off in a career or any occupation in the military, there's sort of this very brief window of time that can span anywhere from a year to 2 years where you are locked into that occupation that you're in. So you do kind of have to commit to learning about the profession that you're in, actually committing yourself to following through with what that profession might require of you. So to answer your question, there is sort of that aspect of having to commit yourself for a period of time before you can decide to leapfrog and jump around between professions.
So it would have been a natural segue for you to kind of go into a research and development or medical profession, given your background. And you talk about adventure. Was there not enough adventure in those different aspects for you to kind of pursue those natural pathways? Or what was it about Naval
Warfare
Officer? The warfare kind of scares me, but
yeah, it's a bit of a aggressive title, but you're mostly responsible for overseeing all the operations and logistics on board of a warship. So with the job itself, the adventure part is there's no short of adventure in the military. Let's put it that way. I've been so lucky to go on all kinds of really interesting deployments. As a Naval Warfare Officer, I've been lucky to go to Antarctica for a deployment back in December of 2023. Just 2 weeks ago, actually, I was up in northern British Columbia. We were like enforcing some fishing mandates and fishing law up there for the Pacific herring spawn that happens. It brings in fishermen from all over the Pacific and North America. I've just been so lucky to really be able to go all over the world so far in this line of work. And I'm enjoying it a lot, and I'm really loving it and having a great time. And I do see myself eventually pivoting and going towards medicine. That's certainly something I want to do down the line. But I think for the time being, I'm just having such a good time and really loving everything that I do, that I'm just soaking all of it in. And I think that there is definitely a point for me in my career trajectory where I will transition and go into healthcare. And that as well has its own basket of adventures as well tied to it. But I'm liking what I do now.
So right now, you kind of touched on it. I like this fishing, the salmon run and the spawn and everything, enforcing the fishing rules. Can you let us know what other kind of decision-making processes that you are in charge of, and what I know it's not typical, but what are some of the other projects or deployments that you're involved with? What do those look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work that I do also has a research and development aspect to it. So some of the skills that I've applied during my graduate degree are very much relevant to what I do now. It's I do talk a lot about adventure and there being fun. There is a very, very deep-seated technical aspect to the work that I do now as well. I can't say that as a naval warfare officer, a lot of the work that I do necessarily has a healthcare focus per se, but there still are a lot of research skills that are applied. So, for example, something that I do now is I've recently been very heavily involved in a lot of Canada's drone policy. So autonomous systems or unmanned aerial autonomous systems, UAVs and UASs are drones, sort of a fancy word for it, are involved in warfare. So what people do, unfortunately, is they'll weaponize drones and use them in armed conflict. And one of the things that Canada is doing is developing its own policy right now to try and find ways to mitigate those kind of enemy systems or hostile systems from being used on our warships or on our bases or personnel when they may be abroad. A lot of the skills that I picked up during my master's degree, things as simple as writing a technical paper or writing a manuscript or even delivering very complex scientific topics to a layman audience, are skills that I use regularly. So I do find myself applying a lot of those skills right now for topics that aren't necessarily related to healthcare per se, but still have an application in the defense world.
Are there any other core competencies that you use on a routine basis in your current role? Like communications, obviously.
Definitely.
Leadership, obviously. What are some of the other skills from the lab that you are applying to your current role?
Yeah. I think right now, one set of skills that I think were very useful that I didn't necessarily pick up from my graduate work specifically, but I think I picked up a lot through the extracurriculars that I was involved with at the IMS, were a lot of the soft skills that you can't necessarily learn in a classroom or at a lecture, but skills you kind of pick up through experience and by doing. As a naval warfare officer, the key word there is officer. So the military sort of has these two main classifications of professions. There's officers and then there's non-commissioned members. Officers are kind of like the managers of the military, and non-commissioned members are the doers. They're the guys who are the subject matter experts, the technicians, the infantry, the ones who will execute orders, and they're the boots on the ground. As an officer, a lot of the work that I do is rooted very deeply in planning and logistics and research as well. I manage about a team of 10 to 12 people, and many of my subordinates are fairly young. They join, usually right out of high school or right out of university. And as their leader, I'm very much responsible for their well-being, for delegating orders to them, to ensuring that the tasks that they are instructed to do are completed and completed to a high degree of quality. And I'm also responsible for taking orders from a superior officer and then delivering that down or passing it down into smaller, more manageable tasks. Those skills are all things that I think you pick up on as a graduate student just by getting involved in things like clubs or even getting involved in things like sports teams. I know when I was at the IMS, I was an IMSA co-president, and that was a responsibility that I shared with Serena Peck, who is, I believe, just got interviewed on this podcast as well. And
don't forget the Health Innovation Challenge.
And the Healthcare Innovation Challenge as well. Yes, she's one of the co-founders, and we started that initiative together, which I am so proud of where it's come, by the way, just a sidebar.
And those skills are like obviously transferable to what you're doing now.
Totally. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And it's never just a take and run. It's always a give and take. So what I learn through my work, even now in the military, I'm still applying a lot of those lessons through the Healthcare Innovation Challenge. And what I learned in the Healthcare Innovation Challenge, even small things, menial tasks, or what would be considered menial, are still things that are very relevant to the military. Something as simple as making sure your paperwork is done on time. Something as simple as making sure that your subordinates are taken care of when there's an interpersonal conflict that's taking place between two members who are junior to you, acting as a mediator and resolving that. Those aren't necessarily skills that I picked up in a classroom, but those are things that you learn through experience, through things like getting involved in a club, or getting involved in student government. Those are all things that I would probably encourage any graduate student to get involved in because it will pay dividends for you in your real life, the real line of work.
I feel like the military training too, this is probably an overstatement, but I'm going to say it anyway, is military personnel. They always seem so respectful. They're doers. They get things done. They're polite. They understand their role in the team.
Right.
So it's a very team-oriented perspective as opposed to, it's all about me. It's me. And I really appreciate that about you, having worked with you on committees. You're a very holistic, you take the team approach, you see your role in it. Is that kind of something that's instilled in basic training? Because I feel like you've got just fundamentally how to be a good person and how to be a good worker in that basic training.
Definitely. It's when you show up for basic training, it is
Rude
a
awakening.
rude awakening, a very, very rude awakening. You are flown in and ushered into a bus, and you all unload out of the bus. And the moment you step off the bus in Quebec, it's usually in a place called Saint Jean. It's like a really small town, just like outside of Montreal. And you have all of these instructors who are just barking at you. The moment you get off the bus, you're being yelled at and told to grab your things, and you're all sort of really disheveled, and nobody really knows each other as they're getting off the bus. You're all really new. And the moment you step off that bus, you are expected to collaborate with all these strangers. From the moment you are told to lay out your bags in a certain way and to open them up for them to search through to make sure you're not bringing any contraband in. And you foster that sort of holistic team attitude all the way through the 8 or 10 weeks that you're there. So it is a never-ending process, and it's very gradual too. It's not like they kind of will throw a ridiculous task at you and expect you to solve it right away as a team. They kind of understand that you're all strangers to begin with, and you're going to sort of foster those friendships and those working relationships as the weeks go by. It starts off aggressive, and it's definitely a rude awakening, but by the end of it, you come out as a very well-gelded group that's able to work together very well. And discipline is a huge part of that package. I know for a lot of people, something as simple as making your bed in the morning can be a struggle, but in the military, that's sort of an expectation. Is you wake up, you make your bed, you iron your clothes, you polish your boots, and you make sure everything's squared away. And if you have a roommate who's struggling, you better make sure that you're out there looking out for him and making sure that he's squared away too. Otherwise,
everyone's going to get punished.
Everyone's going to get punished. Yeah.
So I love that. And it sounds like basic training, everyone needs basic training. Everyone can benefit from basic training.
Totally. Yeah. I definitely think
makes you a better person.
Yeah. There's a lot of really useful life skills you pick up. And a lot of people who join the military and go through basic training didn't have that exposure at home, and they're kind of forced to step out of their comfort zone and be in a really uncomfortable situation at first, but they're forced to pick up that kind of selfless attitude, that kind of team player mentality, because you need that to thrive. Otherwise, it will be a very long and miserable 8 weeks for you.
So can we just kind of go 30,000 feet and look at Navy, Air Force, what are the other ones? Army?
Yeah, those are the big ones. Yeah, yeah.
What are, like, for students and listeners that are, in military sounds interesting. What's essentially the difference between them? What are the career outcomes that are different? How do you know which one is right for you?
It's a great question. So in a nutshell, pretty much any occupation that... Well, I shouldn't say any. Most occupations that you apply to in the military have some capacity to be in any of those elements. So you can either be Air Force, Navy, or Army if, for example, you are a physician or a nurse, or you work in research, or you're an engineer. There's pretty much availability in any of those elements. There are some occupations, however, that are specific to those elements only. And my profession, for example, being a Naval Warfare Officer, I focus predominantly on operations involving a warship and logistics. So everything that I do is focused on the Navy. As for deciding what element you want to go into, it sort of involves having a conversation with a recruiter. It's definitely not a decision that you would make independently, and that's what you have to roll with. When you first sign up to join the military, you're sat down with someone at a recruiting center. There's one in Toronto. there's pretty much any major city in the country will have a recruiting center.
And these recruit for all three of them in the same recruitment?
All three in the
Okay,
same.
got
Yes,
it.
exactly. So you'll show up, and it's not meant to be forcing you, trying to convince you to join. It's more of a collaborative
Let's see
discussion.
if there's a fit.
Yeah, let's see if there's a fit. There's no pressure to sign up right away. You can have as many meetings with them as you'd like with a recruiter. You can even take their phone number down and call them anytime you have questions. They're very accommodating, very welcoming. They're getting paid essentially to explain to the public what this profession is all about and what this line of work is all about. So they're always happy to answer questions. And they'll really just have an honest conversation with you about whether or not you get seasick. Are you afraid of heights? Are you afraid of dark, closed spaces? Do you not like...
Yes, and yes. No, sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the conversation is really about that. And even if you were afraid of all those things, there's still a job for you somewhere in the military. I mean, and you can help out in any way possible. They always need people to support logistics and operations behind the scenes. You don't have to be in the mud or in the rain or in the snow or, in the middle of the Pacific. You could be working in an office in Ottawa or helping out in the harbor in Vancouver or Victoria. So there's something for everyone. And that's the beauty. That's the really cool thing about the military is they are flexible in that sense. And they're just looking for people who want to make a difference and want to help. That's really the most critical value that I think.
So I do want to get back to that because I think that's a really important piece. But I keep thinking of military being high stakes and what you are used to in terms of high stakes during your master's degree is going to be very different than high stakes now. Can you describe maybe your own personal appetite? Sounds like it was quite high during your master's for high stakes. What does that look like now?
Yeah, it's actually a question that I've reflected on quite a lot since joining the military. As a master's student, I think, in some sense, I think you do almost kind of live in this bubble as a master's student where your focus is mostly on sort of your area of expertise and what you're focusing on.
Your pack, your
supervisor. Yeah. Making sure you're hitting all the benchmarks with, getting a manuscript out in time, having this meeting, attending this conference. And a lot of my immediate concerns, I think, were just focused on the now. What's next? Since joining the military, I think I've had to take a step back and think a little bit more globally about my line of work as a whole. And it might be easier if I sort of provide an example. So as an officer, one of my responsibilities is I lead a duty watch. And every day on the warship, when it's tied up along the dock or in the harbor, there needs to be a 24-hour presence on board. It's kind of like being on call, like if you're a physician. As the officer of the day, I am somebody who is responsible for overseeing a duty watch, which is comprised of 6 to 10 people. And our primary goal is to oversee the safety and the security of the ship over that 24-hour period while it's in a harbor. What that entails is if there's a fire on board, if there's a flood on board, if we're in a foreign harbor and there's hostiles who are trying to engage us or board us, if there's an enemy drone in the air, if there's a submersible drone in the water, it's my responsibility to lead those 10 and 12 people to engage in a response to that emergency as it's arising, but also to take on the damage control responsibilities afterwards. So fighting the floods, fighting the fires. And with all of that comes a lot of risk. And I've had to sort of come to terms with the fact that the nature of my profession comes with a professional expectation, and that's what we call in the military unlimited liability, meaning that you have to be willing and ready to potentially put life and limb on the line. And that also means putting the life and limb of your subordinates on the line as well to respond to emergencies as they can arise. So I think my general perception of risk has certainly shifted. My general perception of, I think, how much risk I'm willing to swallow has also shifted. I think I've consciously been a little bit more aware of the reality of risk beyond just things like meeting deadlines and, oh, should I, skip this conference to go do this event? Or, what if I miss my pack meeting? And it's not to say that those things aren't important. They are important and they're critical in the moment. But I think holistically, when you take a pause and reflect on, what's really important here? I have a subordinate who, might not be qualified to fight this fire that's happening on board, but we need someone to fight the fire. Do I risk sending this person in? There's a lot more to consider and a lot more to weigh. So it's not to say that the concerns that I had in graduate school were puny,
Yeah.
but it's just a different beast in general. So I think to answer your question about tolerating risk and accepting risk, I think that was the nature of the question.
Yeah.
It
Sounds
shifted.
like it's it's a gradual process, or is there a punctuated leap in your training that enables you to hold that risk more carefully? Like, I can't imagine going from the concerns we have now as an academic and then putting somebody's life on the line. That must be a very gradual training.
It is.
It's not the kind of thing you just kind of jump into and be expected to do the right thing.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's something that I think is coached into you from a very early point in your training. They aren't expecting everyone to show up and do the right thing instantly and make the right decisions and show up to an emergency and call all the shots the right way. There is a lot of leadership training that goes into it. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of reflection. One thing that I really have to give credit to all of my training officers and the training institution at large is there's a very big focus on ethics and morality and philosophy in the military, which really caught me off guard. I didn't realize that was so deeply ingrained, but you have very regular conversations with your supervisors and your juniors about what it means to do the right thing, what integrity is all about, how to make ethical decisions and sound decisions in high stress environments. And all of those really what seem like small conversations compound over years and years of training. So I've been in the military in a regular full-time role for 3 years now. And I've been so lucky to be engaged in a number of tabletops and conversations and thought experiments and, group sessions, just talking about those things and working them through, and then doing actual practical simulated things as well. So you do kind of get coached into that. It's not like you're just sort of thrown in the deep end.
There are a lot of parallels to medicine then. Like,
absolutely.
It really sounds like it's a wonderful adjacent training for medical school. You talked about your brother's friend who was a naval officer and then obviously was either a physician or planning to be a physician. Yep. Did that influence you? Was that something that was scratching at the back of your mind and you thought, okay, medicine is, I like this exciting route, that I love the adventure and everything, but ultimately medicine is where I want to go with this?
Yeah.
So is that ultimately where you're going? You believe you'll end up in that route? And then what does medicine look like in the armed forces? Do you stay and practice medicine within the armed forces? Do you leave for civilian medicine? Or what does the future hold for Kayvan?
Yeah, it's so it's interesting you mentioned my brother's friend. He was a physician at the time in the military. So he had completed his medical education and he was serving full time as a medical officer. That's sort of the military's fancy term for their in-house physicians. And just sort of having a chat with them, the idea seemed really cool. What's really awesome about the military is they will actually pay for you to do your schooling. So if you are a service member and you decide down the line that maybe you'd like to pursue medicine or really any other professional training, pharmacy, law, a PhD or a master's in something, they will actually pay for you to go out and do it. And you'll still keep your salary and you'll get your tuition covered. And the only trade-off really is that you'll have to commit time back to the military afterwards.
And does that decision come with a certain amount of time already having served in the military? Like, you can't start and in 1 year say, I want to be a doctor. I want to go to med school. It's like, no. You're putting in your 9 years, you finish out the contract, then you pivot.
So that's a really good question. There's no hard set time limit. So you don't actually have to see your full contract through. but you do have to sort of spend a minimum period of time in your profession. You kind of have to hit some important benchmarks professionally related to training and courses, and you have to also be a certain rank as well sometimes to qualify for some of those paid education programs or specialized education programs.
Sorry, let's get back to your brother's friend.
Yeah, no worries. Just having a conversation with him, he sort of painted this really cool picture about being able to pursue your education, getting your medical education paid for through the military. You still earn a salary. You get to do some cool deployments and cool opportunities and travel around the world. And that really appealed to me. And it's something I've kept in my back pocket for a long time. It's something I very much would like to take advantage of and pursue. I will say that life as a medical officer is pretty similar to being a physician civilian side. There is sort of the added caveat of having to obviously deploy. And that can be kind of a big commitment for a lot of people, but it's something people should be aware of if they're considering medicine in the military as a possible avenue. And deploying can look very different. So deploying isn't necessarily you're in the middle of a desert and, living in a tent with no air conditioning or anything. It could look very much like being on a warship in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific or somewhere else in the world because you're responding to a humanitarian emergency. It could also look like being on a allied base somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Japan or somewhere in Northern Africa. And so the nature of deployment is fairly dynamic. It can look like a lot of different things. And that's a really important part of the job is having that flexibility to deploy. And deployments can look like anywhere from a month to 6 months. So it's also variable in that way. But when you aren't deployed, a lot of what you do is very similar to a regular civilian physician. You have a clinic, you see patients, your patients are all military members. You can specialize. So there's anesthesiologists in the military. There's general surgeons in the military. There's family doctors in the military. There's obviously emergency medicine physicians. And they all do exactly the same thing that's expected of them professionally. So it's pretty cool in that way. Yeah, you got a lot of practice.
Imagine that being deployed or having the threat of being deployed would be hard for a family. So, you're married, you have children, you have a family, they all live by the base, you're practicing medicine. Oh, you get the call. Yeah. What is that? I guess that's just a reality that a lot of families accept and live with. And there's a lot of emotional support and social support with the other families that are in the same boat. So it's just something that you accept. I would think that would scare me.
Yeah. And
that was my next question. It's like, I kind of have to ask it, Kayvan, that I love everything that you've said about the military. It sounds like just a phenomenal organization, opportunity for smart, driven, disciplined individuals. There's the reality of the world we live in today is that it's really geopolitically unstable.
Yes.
And how do you live with that fear? Because at any time, things could change dramatically for you. And you could be in the trenches or in the Strait of Hormuz or in a war zone. Do you feel ready for that? Do you feel like, is that a possibility for you? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's something that when you join the military, you're introduced to the idea of 3 sort of ethical values. And the first 2, I think, are the most poignant. The first is respect the dignity of all persons at all times. And the second is to serve Canada before self. And by joining the military, you are accepting that those 2 tenets are very much going to drive your profession. And it's sort of a non-negotiable that when you join the military, when you sign that paper, you are committing yourself to those 2 ethical principles. The third is to respect and obey lawful authority at all times. And that's obviously a very important one as well. But I think at the crux of your question, those first 2 are really the most important ones that are driving sort of that driving that sentiment of understanding that by joining the military, you are accepting that you will follow lawful authority and you will serve Canada before self, because that's what's expected of you. That's what's expected of all of our soldiers and sailors and aviators.
You wouldn't have signed on the dotted line had you
fully understood.
You fully understood that this is why you exist
Absolutely.
in this role.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it applies across all professions in the military, not just those who might be in a combat trade, but even for physicians and for nurses or anyone in any healthcare service in the military. They understand that by joining and choosing to pursue a medical education through the military, they are accepting that they are going to be held to those professional standards.
Right. And then all the years in advance of that deployment are to prepare you so that when you are deployed, you are ready. You're ready mentally, you're ready physically, you have the technical skills that give you the confidence that you can see through very difficult situations.
Exactly. Exactly that. Yeah.
And so if I'm glimpsing into your life in 5 and 10 years, what do I see in the crystal ball?
Ooh. Oh man. I think right now I'm really enjoying what I do. I love the leadership aspect. I love the adventure. Like I said, I love being able to travel the world and to meet new people and to interact with, fellow military members from other navies around the world. I've met some incredible people through this journey and through this professional track that I'm on. And I definitely see myself riding this out for another few years. At some point down the line, I think my heart has always been in medicine. I've always had this affinity for healthcare. I have a deep respect for everyone who is in a healthcare profession, whether that's clinical or academic. And I absolutely see myself pivoting back to that at some point, whether that's through the paid education programs in the military, or if it's civilian side, because I've ended my contract. I'm trying to stay open-minded and flexible. So I think I see myself riding this out for the next little while, enjoying my time with the military, and then pivoting back to medicine at some point. Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to keeping in touch with you and having you on in another 5 years to see where you land.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that.
So sadly, we've come to the end of our time, and I've really enjoyed this talk. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse of what this incredible world is like that we don't often see, and now we have a deeper understanding of and a deeper respect for as well.
Thank you.
What we do at the end of each podcast is, in a minute, I would like you to pitch a career in the military to our listeners.
Okay.
So if you could just outline the kind of people that would thrive in this role and why our listeners should consider a role in the military.
Perfect. Yeah. I think the military is definitely a suitable environment for you if you are someone who is driven, self-motivated, you don't mind getting your hands dirty here and there, and you are someone who is committed to helping others, because at the crux of it, joining the military is about service, not just service to your fellow Canadians, but it's also about service to yourself and to your friends and to your country. It's about making an effort to hopefully leave the world in a more stable place, a more just place, if that's feasible. And pursuing excellence in yourself, both in terms of your professional well-being, your mental well-being, and your physical well-being. So if you align with any of those things, if you identify as someone who's self-driven, self-motivated, and loves to get down and work with people, then I think a career in the military is definitely something folks should consider. Yeah.
Officer Aflaki.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service. We truly
Thanks very
appreciate
much.
it. And thanks for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much. It was a pleasure to be here.